And so next up, we have an interview with Noah Wiley. So Noah, I'm going to bring you on. I feel like he doesn't need an introduction because his career is so long that basically everyone has a favorite. So Noah, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you. This is a beautiful thing you're doing for Valerie. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful of you to spend a little bit of your Saturday afternoon with us. I think it's afternoon where you are, or are you in California?
California, about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Yep.
Oh, okay. So
no, it's 10 in the morning. What am I saying?
It's 10 in the morning. I was like, yeah. I think Kristen gave you the time in Eastern, so it's 1 o'clock for her. It's noon for me. You know what? Time zones are fun. So, how's the weather out by you?
It's beautiful today. It's we're the envy of the nation this time of year. It only gets into the sort of high 50s as the coldest it gets.
That's pretty nice.
Yeah.
It was -3 yesterday.
Yeah. You have my empathy, but you're also living there by choice. I like to remind people that live on the East Coast that you choose and brave those winters almost like badges of honor. And we're out here waiting for you whenever you want to come out.
That's fair. Actually, I'm in the Midwest, so we've got cheese. We've got cheese. It's not working quite so well when it gets to -3, but so we have Keisha saying hi, Noah. We have hello from France. Wow. So our viewership is international right now. So I do have questions for you. I mean, it'd be a little awkward if I didn't. So first up is a pretty easy one, or pretty simple one. How did you get into acting?
Oh, I thought you were going to ask me about Valerie. I got into acting right doing high school plays. I did a couple, and somebody told me that I was good, and that felt really good. So I kept doing more and chasing people complimenting me all the way up into a career. It's one of those things that I was always in and around it. I grew up in Los Angeles and Hollywood. My stepdad is in the movie business. Other family members have been. So it never seemed unattainable to me, and it always seemed really seductive. And so it was just where I wanted to go. I wanted to be a storyteller, whether that's acting or writing or directing or producing, all of which I'm engaged in these days. I don't really have a preference. I just like being part of making up stuff.
And you make up some really good stuff. So yeah, let's talk about Valerie a little bit. So what's your connection to Valerie for anyone who may not know, and what does she mean to you?
Well, I grew up in a house with my father had basically 4 loves in his life, as far as I can tell. My mother, my stepmother, Yvette Mimieux, and Valerie Perrine. And he used to talk about Valerie Perrine in the movie Slaughterhouse-5 as being one of the sort of seminal movies and, of his young adolescence, or coming of age, I should say. And then I first saw her when I saw Superman. The first Superman with Christopher Reeve. She, was Miss Tassbacher, Gene Hackman's lovely assistant. And I had this big, oversized Superman color, photograph book. And there was a great shot of Valerie in her red dress walking down the highway that I stared at a lot through my adolescence. But the first time we met was she played Sherry Stringfield's mother on ER. I had an opportunity to work with her. She did an extended arc. And I really enjoyed watching her. I enjoyed getting to know her. But it was another film that I did called The Californians years later that we really got to spend any real time together. And I got to pepper her with questions about her career and jobs she'd done, in particular Lenny, which has become one of my all-time favorite films. And her performance in that movie is one of my all-time favorite performances. I've studied it numerous times. And, when you act in front of a camera, there's always a degree of self-consciousness, and there's always a degree of artifice, and there's always a degree of rehearsal that you're trying to get through in order to create some kind of truth. And I always felt watching Valerie that she didn't have those other levels to have to get through. What you were getting was so honest and so present and so alive and inventive and clever and sexy, and and that she would be the kind of actor, and I've heard this about her, that other actors in the scene would be jealous of. like that she's doing it and seemingly doing it without effort. She's just being it, where we are all acting it. So when I heard that she had fallen on hard times and she was sick, and that you guys were putting together something to improve her situation, it seemed like a very easy give back for me to be able to join you today, because her work has meant a lot to me.
Oh yeah, it means a lot to us too. She's just, the amount of just movies and television that she's done, and like you said, just her honest performances. Stacy was talking, her friend Stacy, yesterday about how one director forbid her to go to acting lessons because he didn't want her to lose that raw honesty that she had. It's just incredible. She's, oh, and it sounds like she's really a sweet person as well, which
she is very sweet. She's lived an incredible life, so she's also, you know, a repository of some of the greatest anecdotes and memories that, you know, I've ever heard in my life. Some of them were quite off color, and I won't share them with you today, but I will take them to my grave. And if you ever see this interview, I'm sure she'll know the one that I'm referring to when I asked her about Lenny. It was phenomenal.
Well, I'm sorry that we don't get to share because they were off color.
Only spoke to her bravery as an actress, only spoke to her inventiveness, and the level of freedom in which Bob Fosse was allowing these artists to play and explore that relationship. It's the kind of artistic sort of courage that, you know, we all aspire to. I
agree. And so Donna says, just saying, big fan of the Librarian movies, the Librarian series, and the Leverage Redemption series. I have to agree. The Librarian series especially is just one of my favorite shows, period. So do you want to talk a little bit about that? Like, that I feel like it looks like you had so much fun with all
the character of Flynn Carson is, you know, he's like a sort of brother, you know. I miss him when I'm not with him a lot. That's an opportunity that came my way when I was right in the middle of doing ER, and I was invested in all this really heavy storyline stuff of cancer and, you know, dead babies. Everything was sort of happening in that season. I wanted to do something that was hopeful and life affirming and positive, and this thing came around. It was like a cerebral superhero where the guy's biggest muscle is his brain, and he gets to be, you know, sort of fish out of water and the comic relief in all these different situations. And it reminded me of those old Don Knotts movies that I'd loved when I was a kid, you know. So I just jumped at the chance to do it. And then we made these 3 movies, and then it birthed this great TV show where I think we started to really find a tone that would be really, really valuable to have on the air right now, which is just something that people can tune into that doesn't feel like it's being dumbed down. It's just intended to make you feel good and happy and silly, and sort of tap something that's very old in you, that's youthful, that's slightly educational, but ultimately, you know, not cynical, not sarcastic, not edgy or ironic, just fun.
That's why it's my comfort show. And my cosplay partners in the chat here asking me to tell you about, we cosplayed Eve and Cassandra, so I'm gonna show it off.
Come on. Oh yes. Yes, you did. Hello, Eve Baird. Hello, Cassandra. I missed you too.
Thank you. That is, I tracked down the exact skirt that Cassandra wore, though, because they recut all wardrobe, it lays differently on me than on her.
Oh my goodness. You know, her wardrobe, I think, was the favorite wardrobe every week to construct for Critter Pierce, our costume designer. The 2 of them would disappear into the racks and come out with the most. The shows that I directed, it was were the only times that I was ever like, you know, this photograph's a little busy. I'm trying to concentrate on what she's saying, and there's 4 big shiny rhinestones that are making that very difficult for me to do. Can we compromise? and make it one rhinestone brooch.
I love it so much. Curly says she's swooning. Thank you. Yes, seriously, thank you. This is fangirl moment. And Kristen says she wrote her senior project in college on Eris, and she loved hearing about the Apple of Discord on the Librarians. I love the mythology. Like, tying in that mythology that a lot of people may not have dug into. Whose idea was that?
I don't remember who wrote Apple of Discord. That was directed by Mark Ross. And that was really fun because that was Flynn's alter ego episode. That was, you know, I grew up loving The Nutty Professor with Jerry Lewis, and then subsequently The Nutty Professor with Eddie Murphy. But there's something so wonderful when you take a gentle, affable, positive character and allow him to explore what the exact opposite side of him would be. The buddy love character, Flynn Carson, suddenly emerged. And it gave me, I remember John Larroquette just looking at me going, "You're really swinging this week, are you?"
And then Ezekiel was just the same.
Yep.
I loved him.
Never changed.
All the characters. And this is Andrea. She says she loved the Librarians so much. It was so much fun. Loved history, literature. It was just perfect. I promise this won't be the Librarians hour, but there's a lot of love for that show.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, we keep trying to bring it back. And the fact that you guys keep talking about it only helps. The reason why Leverage is back right now, and the reason I'm on Leverage, is because the Leverage fans were so vocal about being fans of Leverage that when Dean Devlin, the executive producer, started shopping it around, he basically was shopping around saying, "I'm going to bring you 2 million people on the very first episode, guaranteed." And Librarians has an even larger audience, I'm told, than that. So, you know, it's not done. None of us want it to be done. I don't know if you can see behind me, but I have half the set in my house.
You really?
You want to know what I mean? I'll tell you. Okay, let's get real. You know those 2 library lions that are outside the library? I've got one of those in my barn. I've got the Spear of Destiny in my living room. Excalibur's in my living room. I've got all my costumes in the attic. I've got the time machine that we used when we fought Anton Gethic in stall in my barn. I've got my librarian portrait, of course. I've got the Judson mirror, of course, so I can talk to Judson when I need to. I took everything. I took a suit of armor. If it wasn't already spoken for, I put it on a truck and took it so that I could bring it back and rent it, make some money on it when we make the show again.
That is delightful. And Carl said the energy that you showed in the program could only be equaled by the Doctor Who character. The wild, fast patter, action. Yes, absolutely.
I steal from the best. I only steal from the best.
And so I have a friend who can't be watching this live, but he is a huge Flynn fan. He's actually going to be doing a Flynn cosplay to go with our Librarians cosplay.
Oh my goodness. Which costume are you going to do? Obviously, he'll be vested. He'll be invested.
Yes, yes. I'm not sure.
Don't be afraid to clash patterns. I learned that with Flynn. Like, you want to wear a paisley with a plaid and a stripe, go for it. The more you put together, if you want to wear a denim with a corduroy, with a little velvet and the cotton, go for it.
The fun of the wardrobe. So, so his question was, so as you know, nerds around the world consider you their personal Indiana Jones. So he wanted to know, and he does too, and he says, we're grateful. So his question is, has it ever been brought up, or have you ever considered a team up with Indiana Jones? And
oh, that one.
I'd watch it.
You know, every once in a while, they reboot the Indiana Jones franchise and talk about finding another indie, and it's almost like, you know, I still think I have a shot. I still get this like little wish from like, well, maybe they'll want to make him a little bit more bookish this time around. You never know.
He's right there. He's right there.
I would love to, you know, we could make more movies. We could make more of the show. I have no preference. I just want to keep that franchise alive. It's too fun. He's too fun.
It's so much fun. And so Carl's saying, wow, that's the epitome of collections. I agree. And Keisha saying,
oh, you know, I got on ER when we bang through those doors with the patients. One of those doors is the door that goes to into the house. I took the CPR practice dummy. I took pieces of the floor from the trauma rooms. I took the exit sign, the floor plan sign. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm a thief.
So you're a klepto. You're a klepto. I love it.
Hoarder, pack rat, junker, picker, collector.
That is delightful. Like I would be too. Let's be real. So Lauren, Kristen's sister, is asking about working with Bob Newhart and Jane Curtin, who are just a really talented cast.
Yeah, they may be the most nervous I've ever been in a day's work. We were in Mexico City. We were shooting this first scene between the three of us. It was a walk and talk down the staircase. Right after it, basically, it's the scene that sends Flynn off on the mission to begin with. So it's not the beginning of the movie. It's not the end of the movie. We're kind of jumping right into the middle of these relationships. And we're starting with a scene where they have most of the dialogue, but I have to sort of find my way through. And we started down those steps. And Bob started into that. What he started to do was he does a delivery, which, and you're waiting for your cue. So we're going, and I'm going down the steps, and then Jane's got her other rhythm. She's just like, she's able to find the spaces in between what he's doing. And I thought to myself, I'm never getting in here. I'm never getting in here. This is going to be horrible. And I hit the bottom of that staircase after the first take, and I thought, oh boy. This is what it's like to be in the deep end of the pool with professional swimmers. Like, it was a gut check moment. And we got back up to the top of the stairs, and I was like, figure out how to get in here, Noah. Flynn would get in here somewhere. Flynn does not want to go on this mission. Make that heard and felt. And suddenly, we were able to find those three energies, which then were consistent for the rest of that shoot and 3 more movies and all the rest of it. But that first day, I don't think that I ever let on how terrified I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. Wow.
And if you get terrified, I guess that makes the rest of us feel a little better about feeling out of our depth sometimes, because you're pretty amazing.
Come on. Life is all about fear and leaning into the thing, for me anyway, leaning into the things that scare you, because you know that the lesson is on the other side, the gold is on the other side. The achievement, the feeling of self-satisfaction and growth all comes from leaving your comfort zone and leaning into the things that make you uncomfortable. That is how I live my life, which is a really kind of difficult way to live, because you're always looking for the things that are uncomfortable and sort of being dissatisfied once you feel at peace, which is not always healthy.
But that's how you get a really great body of work.
So, yeah, that's how I choose roles. I literally, I go, I don't think anyone wants to see me carrying a machine gun fighting aliens. Thank you very much. Well, why wouldn't they? Why the hell wouldn't they? Well, because, I wouldn't believe it. Why wouldn't you? And then it begins. It begins.
So would you say you have a preference for more dramatic roles or more like the comedy and kind of campy roles? Because you've definitely done both.
No preference. I think they enter my life at the moment where I really need a dose of whatever it is. I find that there's a great synchronicity to the jobs that I get to where I'm at personally, and what I'm up for. So lately, I've been really missing doing comedies. Lately, I've been I can't wait to go back and shoot season 2 on Leverage, which we're going to start shooting on March 28th down in New Orleans. And I'm on the writing staff this year, so I got to write one, which was super fun. That satisfies that itch for me. That's the same kind of show. It's about a group of people that are really, really brilliant, doing what they do well in order to bring some justice to the little guy who's getting stepped on.
Leverage is definitely a spiritual twin to the Librarians. It's, like you said, same foundation.
Dean Devlin's brain, right?
Exactly. And so Be My Guest is asking if there's anything from Falling Skies that you kept.
Yes. Well, I wanted to keep more than I did. I wanted to keep my AK-47, which I carried on my back, giving me like a permanent lopsided shoulder for 5 years. Just because I got so good at like taking it apart and putting it back together, and I got so, familiar with it. But obviously, they don't let you take guns out of Canada. It's tricky.
Was that a real AK-47 then?
They were all real weapons that we just had either blank, you know, this latest tragedy that took place on the set of the film Rust struck everybody who ever works with firearms on the set very, very hard, because we all know how careful you have to be and all the different steps and levels of safety that go into employing gunplay on sets. And Falling Skies was a lot of gunplay, so we shot a lot, and every day there were a lot of weapons on set, and every day there were a lot of cartridges on set, and it just became so second nature to us to be that careful that that story really shocked all of us when we all got in touch with each other when we heard it. So I wanted to keep a skidder, but those, I was told, were made of a styrofoam that would crumble and fall apart over time. So I kept my costume. I've got all those Tom Mason coats, and I think I've got, what else? That's a good question. I didn't take that much. Mostly props, little things. Tom Zippo that he used in the first couple seasons, stuff like that. Costumes. So
basically, if
he kept his beard
are out of work, you could open up a museum at your house.
Yeah, that's the hope. That's the hope.
So, Master Dam says, okay, first of all, you're not just a player from a game. You're never just anything, but he or she would like to say that Noah's an awesome actor, and I really love him. And thank you for all you've done, Noah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Master Dam. That's very kind of you to say.
And Donna says, as someone who practices the Norse religion, she appreciates the way it was handled on the Librarians.
Awesome. Well, I don't know if you're referring to the Frost Giant episode that we did, but that was one of the ones I directed, which was really, really fun. That was the beginning of me feeling like I was learning what I was doing as a director, because I did all sorts of really crazy tricks in that are hardly noticeable, but I think add a lot to that episode. Storytelling.
I really love that episode. So you did good.
It's fun, right? I did all this stuff. I wanted them to seem like they were giants. So when they're drinking, they got little tiny glasses, and when everybody else is drinking, they got big mugs. And then we'd do these camera switches where you couldn't really tell that that's what had just happened. The way we photographed them versus the way we photographed everybody else was part of it. And it was a tremendous guest cast that week. We had some really great actors ready to play. Super fun.
It's a good episode. And then, And then Carl says they recognize you on Drunk History, which I haven't seen your episode. Which Drunk History episode were you on? I love that show.
I played the cartoonist Thomas Nast, I believe, sort of an early cartoonist whose political cartoons became the stuff of, that moved people more than some of the text in these newspaper articles. He could say more with a satirical, lampooning cartoon than anybody else could. And I think he was responsible for bringing down Boss Tweed and the Tammany Hall ring in New York with his political cartoons. I had this great big beard, and they were so excited when I showed up because they shaved it down into just this proper Thomas Nast mustache, which I thought about keeping for a while because I thought it was rather becoming.
That's hilarious. I'm gonna have to look up that episode as soon as I'm done with this.
It was fun. If I'm not mistaken, Jason Alexander played the Boss Tweed character.
Yes, that show is so good. How did you get on Drunk History? I
think I wrote him a fan letter. I think I'm not above that sort of thing when I see something that I just think would be really fun to be part of. I think I wrote Derek Waters a letter and had my agent just sort of say, hey, anything ever comes up for Noah, he'd really love to be on.
I feel like that was an easy decision for Derek. Sorry if I'm being too flattering, but
no. It was such a cool job to show up to, because you show up and part of the morning ritual is you go in to get your costume on, you go through hair and makeup, then you usually go to the sound department and you get a microphone put on you. And there's no microphones, there's no sound department, because they don't record sound when you're shooting because it's all just lip sync. What they give you is the audio playback of the person giving the speech, which you've had for maybe a week or so to memorize so that you can do it. But there's something very liberating about making a silent movie and realizing that all that counts here is the picture. Don't have to worry about anything else. So I really enjoyed the challenge of that, that opportunity.
I imagine it's very different from pretty much anything else you've done.
Well, you forget how second nature it gets, but you learn not to put a coffee cup down when you're speaking because it affects the sound of the recording of the line. And you learn to sort of build your choreography around what would make a clean soundtrack. And when you don't have to play by those rules anymore, it's interesting to see how many habits you've developed and how many you can sort of unwind.
Interesting. I always, whenever I watch that show, I'm struck by how much production is put into the acting out part. Like, it's not just a silly drunk show. There's a lot of production that goes into it and a lot of emoting that's on the faces of the actors. So yeah.
I went for it. I went for it. I also grew up lip syncing in front of my mirror hour after hour after hour. That was one of the things that I did as a kid. Was just like, I just remember putting on shows for myself. There was a show when I was a kid called Putting on the Hits. That was like a lip sync contestant show. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking that, if I could just get on there and do my Kool and the Gang celebration, I know I'd take the gold.
You would have. So Lauren is asking, what was your goal before acting?
I don't know that I had too many. I started wanting to do this pretty young. And the ones that I've really wanted to do sort of align themselves. I've always been interested in writing. I like writing a lot. And so I'm getting to do a bit more of that. Directing is something that came up later than I wish it had for me, because once I started, I really wish I'd started earlier. But I've become a bit of an addicted to it. I really enjoy it. I really enjoy the collaboration of getting to work with all the different departments and getting to sort of light ideas up in other people and watch them take your idea that much farther because they're adding their expertise to it. There's something that's so infectious about watching really smart people blow your mind with what they're capable of if you give them an opportunity, just a little less time than they need and a little less money than they need. It's incredible what they can do.
And so Be My Guest is really excited that Harry's on season 2 of Leverage.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I spilled the beans there. I didn't know. I think that was already announced. I hope that wasn't.
Well, I won't tell that you spilled the beans. Your secret's safe with us and however many viewers we reach.
Love you.
So David says AKs are heavy. The newer ones aren't much later either, but they're good guns for killing aliens. David,
I'm not a real gun person. I grew up in a family that had guns. I understood gun safety from a very early age, and I have hundreds in my family. I personally don't like to hunt. I don't like to kill anything. That said, there's something very interesting about guns for me, and because they've been part of my life, even though I really only use them to shoot targets, and I do that very sporadically. That said, the AK-47 is an amazing piece of machinery. It is virtually indestructible. You can interchange all sorts of different parts on it. You can run a tank over the top of it. You can get it wet. You can get it caked in mud. There's a reason why it's the ultimate peasant weapon for third world countries. It's because it's very effective. So that's my little speech about that.
Yes. So this next question is, are you going to direct anything on season 2 of Redemption?
Yep, I did 2 more shots this year in the chair. And yeah, last year was great. I really enjoyed it. I got to do 3 episodes last year and get to sort of know this ensemble and get to figure out this wonderful rhythmic show. And this year I just feel like I've got it, and I want to go back and just do a better job.
That's exciting. And so Kristen says mirror lip syncing in her room was a big part of her childhood too. So you're in good company.
I'm told it's the sign of genius. I don't know. I don't know where I heard that.
And so Be My Guest said it wasn't officially announced that you were going to be in season 2.
Whoops.
You know what? I feel like spilling the beans on a fundraiser for Valerie is a good place. It's good.
Yeah. All right. If you're going to tell anybody that I'm going to be on the show this year and break this secret, you have to donate at least $5 to what we're doing here for Valerie Perrine.
Also, and if they donate $10 or more, they can win some of our amazing prizes.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Well, that goes
one of which is a magnet with your face on it.
Wow.
Yep.
Right. I remember licensing those face magnets. Sure.
Yeah.
I'll tell you more about that if you want. When I was a kid, I was really good friends with a guy who was in a rock and roll band called the Hindu Stuntman. And he worked for a law firm when he wasn't in this band. And they had a foreclosure once on a house of a guy who thought he'd make $1 million by selling Michael Jackson nightlights. And then found out that he wasn't allowed to sell Michael Jackson nightlights, but he had 50,000 of them in his basement, which my friend then took. He used to throw out to the crowd at his rock shows as sort of like, you know, a joke gift. And I have a big box of Michael Jackson nightlights still, but I'm not allowed to sell them.
All right. So that's part of your museum of...
Yeah.
I'm telling you, this could be a side gig for you. That's how you could fund the Librarians revival.
I worry that I just... anybody that watches this interview is going to be nervous to hire me because they're going to say, Wiley's going to take half the set before he's done. We have to pat him down at the end of every day.
Oh, gosh. So Carl is asking, have you had to do any green screen work? And did you find that difficult?
Yep, that all started on Falling Skies. That was the first time, you know, I learned how it's a totally different muscle, you know. And you have to talk about acting without being self-conscious. There's nothing there. Or you're looking at a tennis ball on the end of a C-stand for a reference eye line. And that tennis ball is going to be, they tell you, either the most terrifying alien you've ever seen that looks like a dinosaur, or maybe it'll look like a giant plate of vermicelli. We don't know yet. They're still working on it. But whatever it is, it's really, really scary. And you go, okay. And then remember, there's a room full of grown adults watching you pretend whatever it is you're going to be scared of. And you just sort of jump into it. And I remember thinking like, okay, I'm going to go for it because this is life-threatening situation. So I'm looking at whatever it is, and I'm terrified, 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 terrified. Then I look down the row, and Drew Roy plays my son, is doing cool guy, and the next guy is doing like, this doesn't scare me. The next guy, and I said, wait a second, no. We all have to be playing the same scared. Like I can't be the most scared guy in this line, otherwise I don't look like a leader. We had to figure out how to calibrate our fear for the green screen. So it's interesting. I wouldn't say it's difficult. It brings its own difficulties, but it's also kind of the most pure imaginative play you get to do, right? And then when you get to see them fill in the blanks later, I can't tell you, we'd shoot those scenes on just a big green set, and then the next thing I know, I'd see the show, and I'm standing in a spaceship hovering above Earth, talking to an alien queen, none of which were there when we did it, but it really worked.
That is wild to see, I'm sure. And so Marilyn wants to know, what are some of the props or costumes you took from the set of ER?
I took my stethoscope, I took my lab coat, I took all my IDs, I took one of the doors off the emergency room, I think I mentioned. I think the trauma rooms had very distinctive checkerboard flooring, so when they took down the set, I said I want a 2-foot square cut out of each trauma room, 1 and 2. I took some costume pieces. I took some suture kits and stuff that I figured I'd use in life.
I hope not.
Not like, you know, you never know. I live in the country. You might have to sew up an animal or something. What else did I take? Took my nameplate off my locker. Took a hell of a lot of memories, that's for sure. That's for sure. Oh, a lot of scrub tops. I've slept in scrubs for like 10 years. You know, those were my jammies. So I don't think I have any anymore, but for about 10 years, I went to bed every night in County General scrubs.
Wow. So do you have any memories you can tell us about?
From ER? Oh, yeah. Like, it was the most life-changing experience of my life, not the least of which was getting to meet Valerie Perrine. You know, I got to work with every great actor who came through that show, from people that I admired in my childhood to people that are now huge household names that were nobodies back when they walked through our halls. It was a really amazing show that way. It caught people at the end of their careers and the beginning.
Yeah, it was basically just such a fundamental show for so many people, and just wow. So I'm sure lots of good memories. And let me see. I'm sorry, we have a lot of comments. I want to make sure I get them all.
Sure, absolutely.
So Andy says, Mom bought me your movie Guinevere because she knows I'm a fan of you. He didn't see it yet, but can't wait to see you as Lancelot.
Okay, Andy. A couple disclaimers there. Not my proudest moment. I'm going to go right on record and say, I thought we were making a movie that would be sort of the Excalibur for the 90s. Instead, Guinevere ended up showing as an installment of romance theater on Lifetime, and deservedly so. It was a beautiful miss, if you will. Filmed in Vilnius, Lithuania, height of the Cold War. It was a rough go from start to finish, but enjoy.
You know what? That's fair.
The greatest thing I can say about it was that it was Donald Pleasance's final film, and I got to spend a lot of time with the wonderful actor Donald Pleasance. And we had many, many drinks in the hotel bar, and he told me many great anecdotes from his career and life. That's the closest I've ever come to Indiana Jones, by the way, because I was Lancelot, but Sean Patrick Flannery, who played the young Indiana Jones, was Arthur. And we were running around Europe together, Lancelot and Arthur. Nice. Here's a perfect anecdote. I don't think it's going to ruin it for you, Andy. But at the end of the movie, I'm supposed to show up on my – it would ruin it for you. I'm going to ruin it for you. At the end of the movie, I'm supposed to show up. My army has been destroyed, and I stuff straw into a bunch of suits of armor to make it look like I have an army to scare the evil king from trying to marry Guinevere. He's got Arthur captive. He looks up on the hill and he sees me with my army and he capitulates. He surrenders. They put me on this horse that was a Russian horse that only understood Russian commands. And I'm an okay rider, but this was a horse that was a degree above my capability. And the second my horse noticed that all my men were made out of straw, he began to eat. And he would not stop ripping the arms and legs off my men during every shot. So when you see the movie, the only footage they were able to actually use of me on the hill with my army is like a close-up. And so the climax of the movie is the evil king looking at me and just inexplicably surrendering. Guinevere of Camelot.
So what movie would you rather people watch instead of Guinevere?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a good question. I think my television career is better than my film career. I've been lucky enough to have been in some very good movies, but I wouldn't call them good movies because of my performance necessarily. There's been a few. A Few Good Men's good. Speaking of few,
yes,
watch that.
Very good, very good. So watch that. Guinevere.
Yeah. Oh, you can watch Guinevere for fun. You can watch a young actor trying really, really hard. When I look at that, I think, look at you. Look at you. God bless you. You're in there. You're doing it. You're swinging for the fence. You're trying. Yeah.
I mean, we all start somewhere.
Indeed, we do. Oh, it was horrible. I was in a relationship at the time, and that was not going well. And there was an international delay on all phone calls, so that I'd say, hello. Hello. How are you? All right. So it sounded really horrible, right? Like somebody didn't want to talk to you. I'd say, I love you. I love you too. Oh. Everything sounded just distant and cold and foreign. Yeah.
So here's a question. Does anyone ask you questions about the episode of Friends you're on? I assume you get asked about it a lot.
I'm amazed at how many people see it. You know, I don't think that there's a week that goes by where it doesn't air somewhere, or somebody is watching Friends for comfort and comes across it, or somebody's kid is watching it for the first time and recognizes me. You know, that episode was, you know, ended up being one of the more talked about things I've ever done, actually. And we did it on kind of a lark. I knew those guys from before. In fact, the relationship I was just referring to, the girl that I was with, was living with Jennifer Aniston at the time. And their best friend was Matt Perry's girlfriend. And a bunch of them came out of Northwestern and knew Schwimmer. And so we were all kind of around each other. And then our shows hit at the same time on the same network, shooting on the same studio lot. And we did all the press together. So we all were so friendly and collegiate that it seemed that we used to go over and watch them tape. You know, we'd finish shooting, go over on Friday and watch them tape. And then it just sort of seemed like, hey, you guys want to do one? Yeah, why not? It just was that casual. And so we went over and it took one afternoon to shoot the little bits that we did for her. And then that was it. So simple.
And it was such a fun episode. It was like just a perfect cameo. Like, it was perfect. So
what's crazy to me is every time I see it, I look younger and younger to me. And I look, you know, more and more like my 16-year-old daughter than I do like my 50-year-old self.
I mean, yeah, time is funny that way, huh? So Lauren is asking who your favorite ER guest star was. Is that something you can
choose from? I was recently interviewed on an ER podcast where some of those names of some of the actors I got to work with came up again, so they're pretty fresh. And for whatever reason, Carter was the character that gave a lot of the older patients to. So I got to work with Red Buttons and Eli Wallach and Mickey Rooney and Sanford Meisner and Alan Alda and Ed Asner, and you know, really tremendous people. And I got to work with them intimately. You know, where we'll spend. Ed Asner became a very dear friend. His passing just recently was very sad for me. And Red Buttons and I got to be very close before he died too. So those two guys in particular become sentimental favorites. I loved working with Don Cheadle when Don was on the show. We had some tremendous guest stars. Hard to pick.
That's fair. I would not be able to pick either. So Steve wants to know, he remembers hearing a rumor way back in the 90s that you had been approached by Microsoft to do a commercial for them, but because you're an Apple fan, you turned them down. Is that true?
I would love to say that it was true, because it makes me sound like, you know, die hard. But I don't remember that happening. Maybe I did. It doesn't. I was pretty flippant back in the 90s about what I would do and what I wouldn't do. It both sounds like something I might have done and also sounds a little bit of like rumor.
And he says he loved your Steve Jobs portrayal.
Well, I think that's one of my favorite things I've ever done. I really enjoyed making that movie. The collaboration I had with Martin Burke, who wrote it and directed it, was really great. And I loved working with Joey Slotnick, who played Wozniak, who I got to work with again 20 years later, just last season, on an episode of Leverage, which was so fun to get to again. Yeah, but Jobs was a fascinating character. I really enjoyed doing the research. I really enjoyed the freedom they gave me to explore the part. I really was topped off by getting a phone call from him, you know, with the ultimate compliment of him asking me to come to the Macworld convention and impersonate him and do the first 5 minutes of his keynote address dressed as him and do this little skit.
Which is wild. That's hilarious.
It was so cool. So cool.
I assume it went over really well.
It went over great, you know, and to me that was who he was. Bill Gates also did, you know, this is what he said to me. He called me on the phone the day after the movie aired. I answered my phone. I said, hello. He said, Noah? I said, yes. He said, this is Steve Jobs. My heart starts going. He goes, listen, I'm just going to tell you, I think you did a good job. I didn't like the movie. I didn't like the script. I think if you'd spent a little bit more money, a little bit more attention to detail, probably a little bit more time, you guys could have had something, but you were very good. So, okay, thank you very much. I do this thing every year called the Macworld Convention. I'm going to do it at Jacob Javits Center in New York this year. There'll be about 10,000 people there. I think it'd be funny if you came out dressed as me and did my kid first. I was like, yeah, man. And I remember thinking, like, Bill Gates also didn't like the movie and kind of made a press release saying he didn't like it. But Steve Jobs was smart enough as a marketing genius to not like the movie, but get me to come to his event, lampoon himself briefly, and then kick the actor off the stage, take center stage, and say, oh, by the way, you know, this is what I call the MacBook Pro or whatever the hell he was debuting that year, which was mind-blowing. So it's sort of perfect, right? I mean, he didn't like it, but he figured out how he could use it. He figured out how he could be self-effacing, but also not, and put it in its useful place for himself.
There's no such thing as bad publicity. I mean, that may not be true nowadays, but it's still kind of true.
I'll tell you because we still got 15 minutes, but that night he took me out to dinner at the Soba Noodle restaurant down in Greenwich Village in New York. And he brought his executive design team, maybe 5 or 6 or 7 guys, maybe a woman too, around the table. And they all worked for him, so they were all very afraid of him. And they didn't speak unless they were spoken to, and he'd say anything, and their heads would snap up to attention. And I was being pretty funny, and you know, I could be, and I was enjoying myself very much. And all of a sudden he said, you know what I want to make? And all their heads snap up and go, what, Steve? What do you want to make? He goes, you know, picture frames? And they go, sure, Steve, we know picture frames. Absolutely, Steve. He goes, no, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a picture frame, but instead of seeing a picture of your kid holding a baseball bat, you see him swing the bat, hit the ball, run to first. Let me show you what I mean. And he takes his white napkin and a Sharpie out of his pocket and starts drawing the schematics of what it would take to put a little JPEG movie chip inside of a frame to show a little movie on a loop. How much memory it would take, the size it would have to be, full schematic, passes it to the first designer. Designer looks and goes, yeah. Next designer gets it. Whoa, yeah. Next designer gets it. Wow. Next designer gets it. Huh. Next designer, and all I'm thinking is, I want that napkin. I want that napkin. I want that napkin. I want that napkin. I'm gonna get that napkin. Napkin's moving his way around the table. It ends with Steve, who's sitting to my left. We finish the dinner. He pays the check. Very nice to meet you. Great evening. My hand is on the napkin. I'm going to get the napkin. I'm going to take it. Everybody gets up from the table to leave. He goes to the door. He says goodbye from the door. And then he turns back and says, I've got my napkin in my hand. And he says, hey, Noah. I go, yeah. He goes, you want to share a cab? And I go, yeah. And I dropped the napkin, and I took the cab ride, and I never saw him again.
Aww.
But I left the napkin. And as I was getting out of the car, I was so upset about the napkin that I had the cheek to say, oh, by the way, hey, Steve. And he had got the same round glasses for me to wear when I dressed up like him earlier. And I had them in my pocket. I said, would you sign these for me?
Oh.
And he took the glasses, and he wrote Steve on one lens and Jobs on the other. And I think they're in that card catalog behind.
I love that. That is amazing. So that napkin just stayed at the restaurant, though.
There's a busboy somewhere in New York City that's holding a Steve Jobs original schematic, or it's in the trash.
That would have made a heck of a souvenir for you, though.
Right? I mean, it's like an Edison original. It's like having a Nikola Tesla power coil drawing. You know, it's
and that busboy probably just threw it away. That makes me sad.
Probably like, who drew on the napkin?
Oh my gosh, that makes me sad. So this question, what stunt did you do that you're the most proud of? Most dangerous or most difficult?
Me and stunts, we go back and forth, you know. I had this weird thing happen where the first 2 movies I did them back to back, and I got accidentally lit on fire in both of them. So I approach stunts very cautiously, and I really don't do anything that I don't feel like I can do. And I've learned a long time ago that there are stuntmen who can make me look way better than I can make myself look. And so I don't get hung up on the ego of wanting to do that stuff. That said, I've always liked doing pratfalls and physical comedy, and I think, you know, doing Librarians, I did a bunch. I wouldn't call them stunts, but sequences, you know, choreographed sequences that involved some degree of difficulty and some degree of risk. Pratfalls, that kind of thing, which, you know, can hurt your tailbone, but I tend to, you know, stuntmen are very methodical about the way they do things, and they don't get emotional about when they do them. They're very logical and they're centered. When I'm acting, I'm the opposite of that. And so when I throw myself around, I don't do it the way that I'm supposed to do it. I always am kind of hurting myself unintentionally, which is worth it. But in the long term, you know, I remember in Librarian 2, there was a stunt where I had the second movie where I would fall down a cave and do a really good pratfall. And somehow I think it was an artifact or something that was shaped like a human head that I had in a bag. And they took the thing out, obviously, so I didn't fall in it, but they replaced it with a styrofoam head, like a wig head that was in the bag. Anyway, I came down on that, and I ended up breaking 2 ribs, and then having to finish that movie really uncomfortable. So I answer your question long-windedly. I look at it, I think about it, I deliberate over it, I wonder if I could do it. If I think I could look kind of cool and impressive doing it and not hurt myself too bad, I'll do it. Otherwise, have at it.
I do not blame you. I couldn't do it. So Kristen wants to know, she says this is going back to the mid-90s, but do you recall the Ask Extra segment on Extra and answering a question about your film career?
No, I'm afraid I don't. Did I say something in particular?
I'm not sure. There's not a follow-up comment, so I'll watch for that. But let's move on.
You know, Extra started right when we were on ER, and I was like their guy for a while. I was on I went on a European press tour for ER, and they gave me cameras and film and told me to film a sort of filmography that they were going to show as excerpts. And, you know, I remember talking a lot of nonsense back then, so I could have said any number of things.
That's right. She said she got to ask the question, and you said Crook Hearts.
Crook Hearts. Oh, well, Crooked Hearts was the first movie that I ever did. I did that when I turned 19 in Vancouver, Canada, making that. And that was a great experience for me. You know, your first movie is like your first love. And I was with some wonderful people. Vincent D'Onofrio, Peter Berg, who's now a very famous director, and Juliette Lewis played my siblings in this family drama. And Peter Coyote was our dad, and Jennifer Jason Leigh was my brother's girlfriend. Wonderful ensemble of actors. Really good.
Yeah, that takes it back. Yeah, Kristen's been a fan of you for a while.
Wow.
Since the mid-90s.
That's early 90s. That was 91.
And Be My Guest says Crooked Hearts is a great movie, and your character, Ask Warren, is wonderful.
He was a really good character, really great character, actually. Sympathetic character. Great. Got to die. My first movie, got to do a death scene. Factoid, there was also a love scene cut, probably because I was so awkward in it. Yeah,
I feel like love scenes have got to be some of the most awkward things to film.
They're horrible. They're really horrible. I mean, I've never particularly looked forward to shooting one, and I've never particularly enjoyed the process. Not that the actresses I've worked with were not lovely and talented and all that, but they're just it's not something we go to work to do every day. That said, I did a job a couple of years ago called The Red Line in Chicago, where I was playing a gay character, and I had a sort of a makeout scene with another character. And for the first time, the producers wanted me to talk to what they call an intimacy coordinator. And I got really upset, saying, this sounds like an HR thing, like, you know, I'm not going to talk to some person, some suit before I talk to the director, blah, blah, blah. And then I met this woman who was really a movement specialist, trained from the stage, where you have to simulate a lot of things from sight lines so that you can look like you're doing things you're not really doing. And she broke it down much more like a dance or like a fight scene, you know, with the choreography needing to be specific in order to look elegant. And that her job was to articulate the vision of the director to the actors, engage their comfortability level, to go back to the director and figure out how to shoot it. And suddenly, this thing I was really nervous about became highly technical. So it was about, from this shot, what we really need is, Noah, if you drive Vinny back against this wall, and then you kiss him and your head goes to the left. And then Vinny, if you take your left hand and put it up on Noah's left shoulder, then the next shot we need is that you guys will go out of that frame. The next shot will be you guys fall into this frame. And so it was really piece by piece, almost like a dance. And suddenly we got to shoot it, and we knew what we were doing. We knew what was expected of us. It was the quickest, most efficient filmmaking I've ever done. Love scene, fight scene. It's the most efficient working I've ever done. And I thought to myself, I only want to do it this way. And then I realized that this person wasn't really there for me. That person is going to be there on set to help actresses have an advocate against being taken advantage of in those moments where they've never had an advocate before. And I realized, oh, this is long overdue, not just from a creative perspective, but from an oversight perspective. So going into them in the future, I will request that. And I think I will feel differently about them because they're there.
You're kind of like, where was she like 20 years ago? Right?
Usually, I'm not going to throw anybody into the bus, but love scenes are usually like, okay, and you know, you guys just sort of, you know, in action, and then you kind of like make out a little bit and think, you know, but then at a certain point, someone says cut, you know, and then you feel kind of relieved. But what you don't do is say, are these people really connected? Like, is one person more aggressive than the other? Are they both, you know, is it awkward at first and then gets into a rhythm? Like, these scenes can be acting scenes. These scenes can be really important beat by beat character scenes where a lot is conveyed silently just in the specificity of the movement we choose to do. So I think that love scenes up until now have been greatly missed opportunities to further the storytelling in the most significant way. And instead we end up with a montage with the same 5 shots that we've all grown accustomed to seeing to get through the love scene to get to the next scene. But I would much rather see that scene slower, beat by beat, and have it more coming from a place of inevitability because of who these characters are, and interesting because of who they are. Does that make sense?
I agree. I like that. I feel like that's a good note to end on. Well, do you have anything else you want to share with us?
Oh, I don't know if anybody, you know, please give to Valerie. This is a woman who deserves to be able to fall into a social safety net of people who have enjoyed her work over the years. And I intend to donate, and I don't need any swag to do it. I encourage everybody else to do the same. And I really appreciate you doing this to arrange for her. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. The link is down there for anyone who wants to donate. We made it a tiny URL, so it's really easy. Thank you again for being here. This has been...
I'm going to screenshot that right now so I can get it.
Yes.
Got it.
All right. Thank you so much, Noah. This has been a joy. Everyone in the comments has enjoyed your stories. People really enjoyed the napkin story.
Well, see you all next Saturday at Noah's Collector Shop. By any turn. Every item has a story. All priced to move.
Thank you very, very much. So, and then Kristen is saying, thank you, Noah. Kristen is the one who actually booked you and coordinated with your agent. So
thank you. I'm glad it's all worked out. Enjoy the rest of the weekend.
Yes, you too.
And if anybody's talking to Valerie, please give her my love. Tell her I said hello. Thank you.
We will. We'll pass that on. Thanks, Noah.
Bye.
Bye. The Multiverse fundraiser is a benefit for Oscar-nominated actress Valerie Perrine. Ms. Perrine is known for her roles in Superman, Slaughterhouse-5, Lenny, and so many more. We've teamed up with documentary director Stacey Souther to raise money for Valerie's medical expenses and other needs. Every donation and every post share gives you the chance to win super prizes. Go to the website listed for details.